Alright, so to begin, we need to make sure we have a whetstone or a sharpening stone, and we need to make sure we have our wood carving tools. So today we're going to be using just a simple wood carving knife. You can get this at most hobby shops or any wood carving shops. I'm going to be using my flex blade palm tool. It's a little bit thinner, it's a little bit more affordable for beginners as well, and the flexibility in the shaft allows you to get into some small spaces. I also have my V gouge here, and I have my U gouge. Now my V gouge, the U gouge, and the simple carving knife were the first 3 carving knives that I had when I began my wood carving hobby. So it's important to have some type of sharpening stone, whether it's diamond plate or a whetstone, but more importantly is to have a leather strop. They're very useful for removing burrs from your blade and polishing your metal once you're finished sanding it down, once you're finished sharpening it. Most of the time you can actually sharpen your tools using the leather strop, and you don't even require a sanding stone, a whetstone or a diamond plate. So today we're actually going to be sharpening my tools that I haven't used in a while. I'm not sure if we'll need all of them, but just in case, we're going to make sure that we do get them all ready to use. As you may notice, there are 2 sides to a leather strop. One side is a finished flat side, and one side is a rough side where the polish is applied. The wax or polish that's applied to the rough side of the leather also helps to soften it up so you're not tearing through and wearing down your leather strop too fast. And then we use our fine flat edge to just clean up the blade and remove any remaining burrs and get us ready for carving with a very, very sharp blade. Thankfully, my flex knife only needed to be done on the strop. It did not require any whetstone. However, for my V gouge, it was very worn and the edge was almost completely gone, so I had to do whetstone and leather strop for that. And although I never ended up using it in this project, I did sharpen my U gouge as well, because again, like the V gouge, the cutting edge had almost all worn down from using it quite heavily before my move and before I let my tools sit for a while. Now, I didn't know when I began preparing my tools that I wasn't going to use the U gouge, but I'm still happy that I got it sharpened. If you are going to be sharpening 1 or 2 tools, you might as well take the time to make sure that all of your knives and your gouges are sharpened, so that you're ready to use them the next time you need them and you're not taking up too much time preparing them. Alright, and this is going to sound like a kind of obvious no-brainer, but at all times make sure of the direction you're carving, and always imagine what would happen if the blade were to slip off the wood. Make sure it's not going to get any fingers or stick into your palm. Again, I know this sounds like a very obvious thing, but I have personally cut myself many times wood carving, and although I lost it before filming this video, I do have Kevlar weave carving gloves specifically to protect my fingers and my hand, because I have made that mistake several times. For this project and for most basic whittling, we do use basswood. It is a soft wood that is easy to carve through, and these little blocks that you can buy at many craft stores and pretty much every wood carving shop are the great size for small little figures like you saw there. There was an owl that I had begun working on, But I did want to show you all kind of start to finish how you can turn a block of wood like this into a fun little carving that takes about a half an hour or so. I've decided today that I'm going to carve a type of soldier or pirate type thing, and I want the character to have a hat. So what I'm doing right now is making what is called a stop cut. So you want to make a deep enough cut into the wood that you can then begin to carve away, but your knife isn't going to go flying through a large piece or fly off into a finger or something. It will hit that line that you made and the blade will stop. So we call those a stop cut. So my stop cuts typically will outline the hat, if whatever I'm carving has one, or the neck or head area, or even the hairline, because starting with that allows you to frame the remaining pieces of the block and allows you to begin visualizing what's going to go where. And so I've just made a stop cut for the nose. So the first thing we're going to do is clearly define where the nose is going to be in relation to the first stop cut being the hat or hairline. So we carve up from what would be the lip or the mustache area to define the underneath of the nose, and then we can eventually carve from the top of the nose up the ridge toward the hairline or hat. What I'm doing right now, though, is I am carving up to my stop cuts to kind of show a curvature on either side to once again just more clearly separate the top area to the sides, which would be, the hairline or a bandana or whatever you wish, depending on what you'd like to carve. It's all about slowly putting more details in to frame what you see in your mind. Whether it's an animal or a person, you kind of work slowly in small stages to kind of chip away or carve away until your imagination comes to life in the wood. I also apologize for the small screen. This was one of two of my first videos that I ever filmed for the channel, and I was not smart enough to use a widescreen angle. So what I'm doing here is I am firmly putting lines in for the eyes. There are many different ways that people carve eyes. In fact, many of them just use the V-gouge and carve out the shape for the eyes using that. It's pretty simple technique, but I also find that putting the line in now allows you to then carve up the nose a little bit more, knowing exactly where your eyes are going to be, framing your face a little bit better. And every wood carver you're going to see has their own unique styles. Some people like to make the nose the most prominent feature and then hide the eyes behind it. Other people like to make more 3D realistic eyes and go for more realism carving. It really depends on what your style is, what you're comfortable with, and what you think is going to be a good starting method for you if you're just beginning and learning the trade. So I use the knife to just deepen my cuts into the eyes here, just a simple carving knife. It's a bit of a different style than most wood carvers will use for faces. There are plenty of videos you can watch, but I like using the knife to get the main part of the eyes cut out, and then I will go in later with a V-gouge to deepen them. Alright, so now that I have a clear outline of the nose, the eyes, where the hat's going to be, it's time to make an outline of the bottom of the face. I decided I wanted my little sailor to have a curly mustache and a beard, so I'm using my knife now to carefully just outline simple stop cuts for the curls of the mustache so I know exactly where they're going to be on the carving. Once I've done that, I'll jump around and begin refining parts of the hat, refining the hairline, so I don't always do things in what you might think is a logical order. You start on one thing and then immediately move over to something else. Because the way I carve is, in my mind, I see a shape in the block of wood that I want to create. And I might begin working on one thing, but then the corner of my eye jumps up to the corner of the piece of wood, and I think, oh, I wanna start shaping the hat, so I'll start carving that and shaping the hat. And then, like you see here, I immediately jump back down to framing the beard on the bottom of the face of the figure. So it's not the easiest to follow my process because I do tend to jump around a little bit because I see something, that's going to help me refine the shape and bring what I'm seeing in my head into reality. So now that I've used the carving knife to outline where the facial hair is going to be, I'm going to use the V-gouge now to deepen the outline and separate kind of the cheekbones and the skin area from where the mustache and where the beard is going to be. The V-gouge just creates more depth, which you can then go in with a flex knife or with a carving knife and kind of round off the cheekbones, using the outline you've made for the facial hair using the V-gouge. And now I'm just using my carving knife to kind of create a bit of depth from the mustache to the beard. Just trimming off a little bit more wood so that the mustache and a kind of goatee area of the beard are going to stand out. What you want to do, at least what I like to do, is sort of get the main shape of the beard and the facial hair carved out, and then you can use other tools to put in the details of actual individual hairs if you like, but first you kind of want to get that rough shape carved out. So as you can see here, if I try to now round out the cheekbones, that blade is going to be too large and I'm going to cut off too much, which is why I have my palm handle flex blade here. When I started carving, I only had the knife and the two gouges, but I realized very quickly that there were smaller areas that I just couldn't get to with the large and longer blade of the carving knife. I needed something smaller and more agile. This was one of the best additions I made to my wood carving arsenal because I can get into these small areas. I can round off cheekbones. I can deepen eyes a little bit if I want to. And in the opening, if you saw the two kind of Lord of the Rings style dwarven heads that I've carved, there's no way I would have been able to get into some of those smaller areas if I didn't have a more versatile knife like this. So I really love having this, and I do recommend if you're going to get into whittling and wood carving that you make sure you have at least 3 or 4 tools, small blade, long blade, and then a couple of gouges, just so you can make sure you can get into small areas and put exactly the details you want into your carving. I sometimes also use this smaller blade to outline designs. Make a little stop cut for, the brim of a hat, and then you can come back in like I am here with the larger knife to remove bulk pieces in larger chunks. But the very small knife is good for just outlining those details. And like you see here, when I do have to make repetitive carves, I do find it's easy to just use my thumb as kind of a starting and stop point, and then just rotate my hand in and out. The more you carve, you'll realize that your hands do get sore, and you're pressing against these knives, your thumb gets sore. So anything you can do to kind of make the process a little bit easier for yourself and remove a lot of the larger motions in your hands, you won't get as sore and you can carve a little bit longer. Whatever cheat code you can come up with, definitely use it. Looking at my carving there, I really didn't like seeing the back look so straight and so square. So because it bothered me, I had to immediately begin to carve out the back to round off the shape of the hat and the hairline on the back of the figure. Definitely wasn't what I was doing, but like I said, sometimes you see something and you have to refine your image again. And you can jump back and forth between different parts of the carving. Really, whatever helps you bring the shape you're seeing in your mind to fruition in your wood, do whatever you have to do. So here I'm going to use the V-gouge to both outline kind of the goatee section that I have under the bottom lip of the beard, and then you can also use the V-gouge to put a lot of vertical cuts into the beard area, and it gives it the illusion of individual hairs, finer hairs. You can be as detailed as you want with this process or not. It's really up to you and whatever style you prefer. And again, I know it seems obvious, but when you're making cuts like this, please make sure that you're making the cuts away from you and that you're not at risk of cutting into any of your fingers. So this is a very simple carving you can do. Didn't take a whole lot of time. It was only about 30 minutes or so for me to carve this up. It looks decent. There's plenty more refining I can do. You can get to processes in your carving where you decide to sand things down to get a smoother look and then continue. But as you can see here, we only used 3 tools. We used our V-gouge, our flex knife, and our carving knife. I never even used our U-gouge. And we were able to create something pretty cool in a short amount of time. So I hope you can all see how easy it is to get started in wood carving. I hope you enjoyed watching the video. If you'd like to see more wood carving videos, please like and subscribe. And you can also make suggestions. And I hope you give it a shot. It's a lot of fun and very relaxing.